Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, and welcome to the Cashflow Diary podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because we are going to talk about something that I think is, well, relevant. Relevant to you, relevant to me, relevant to all of us, because times have changed. Meaning, you had a plan. That everybody has a plan. In fact, our guest today would say that, yes, everyone has a plan until they're punched in the face. That, you've heard that quote from Mike Tyson before, and it's also true again. You had a financial plan. You knew what you were going to do. You had it all mapped out and everything was good. And then this small little thing called a pandemic came in the middle to mess all of that up. So today's guest is here to assist you and myself and all of us to make sure that we can put ourselves in a better position. I have with me none other than Mark Willis. He's a CFP, that's Certified Financial Planner, AKA he knows a lot of stuff about money. And what's important about that is not just like what money is, although that's important, but also how to use it, how to leverage it, how to put yourself in the positions you need to do now in order to end up where you want to go. Because there's nothing more important. You don't plan a trip, you don't go to the grocery store without having an understanding of which direction you're going to go. The same is true for your money. So what that means is that today is that we're going to talk about that. We're going to put ourselves in that position, and we're going to all take some good notes to make sure that you and I can keep going in the proper direction despite the circumstances. So do me a favor. Let's get ready to listen, learn, and love Mark Willis. Mark, how you doing?
Man, I'm loving life. What an introduction. Thanks, Jay, for having me on the show.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. Definitely glad that you are here. Now, here is my question. The first time that you're here, first time anyone is here, I have to ask them the same question I tend to ask everybody else. Are you ready?
Let's do this.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. So, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, Hulk, you get the idea. Because I think of today's entrepreneurs a lot that way. There's a lot that we have in common. For example, as an entrepreneur, I can envision myself flying around town, leveraging our products and services, and saving customers one sale at a time, just like a superhero. But also, a superhero has a beginning. If you think about Spider-Man, for example, there was a time where he was just a kid going to school, doing his thing, and then one day decides, because he discovers, if you will, that he's got a superhuman ability. He was bit by a spider, and now he's got to choose. Do I use this power for good or for evil? So my question to you is as follows. Before being a CFP, before your Lake Growth Financial Services, the company, and before your books, before everything that we know you for today, even before not your average financial podcast, your podcast, even before then, what we want to know is, who is Mark Willis?
Well, you love the Spider-Man story. I'll start right there. I was bit by a radioactive banker.
Okay. A radioactive banker. I love it.
So didn't quite get the wall climbing abilities that our friendly neighborhood friend received. But here's the story. Mm-hmm. The college years of my life were awesome and incredible. I met one beautiful woman, and she's now my incredible, beautiful wife. But I unfortunately met another woman in college that hung around with both of us after we left. I know that sounds weird, but her name was Sally Mae.
Ah. Yes, you did. Many people have met that woman.
That's right. She wanted a room in our house, and the payments were great. We had 2008 was the year we graduated grad school, and we left school with $120,000 of student loan debt. And for us, with no jobs in the middle of the Great Recession, that was a big chunk of cash with no plan to pay it off, Jay. And so we stuck with it, tried to power our way through it, just tried to punch into that debt and get rid of it as fast as we could. But it was crushing. It was like a mortgage payment we didn't ask for. And our careers were not starting like you think you might get a career once you graduate college, unless you're in the middle of a global crisis, which has happened now 3 times since just the year 2000. Right. So if you're listening to this and you're not yet graduated, first of all, good for you for learning outside of your schoolwork. Incredible shows like Cashflow Diary. But 2, just realize you could be right where I was and where millions of other Americans are right now, unemployed, with lots of debt and no plan to pay it off. And so that's really where the story began, was being bitten by a radioactive banker called Sally Mae. And for the next few years, our goal and our plan was to figure out how could we find a way to build true wealth and become not just debt-free. How could we be better than debt-free? How could we fire our banker and become our own source of financing? Being better than debt-free to me meant becoming the banker himself. So the superpower was, we became the banker, right? We were bit by that radioactive banker. We became a banker to ourselves and to many others now. And we've learned to become our own source of financing, controlling the environment where our money lives, controlling the cash flow to an extent where we haven't felt this recession, and we plan not to feel another recession ever again for the rest of our life. We're financially immune. We've protected ourselves from the pandemic. We've antivirused our money, Jay.
Yeah, I like the idea of financially immune. I think there's going to be a lot of people who can resonate with either not only those phrases, but that idea, that concept, and they're going to want me to ask more questions. So here we go. There's some things that you said that I think were interesting, but before we get to the, good stuff, the relief, I want to dig in for a second. So I just want to make sure I set the scene correctly. You said 2008 is when you and your bride graduated, correct?
Yep.
And that you graduated, and that was grad school, not just
undergrad. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Yeah, that was grad school when we got through. It was May 2008. Great time of year to be entering the job force.
So, and then when you said 120, was that both of you, or is that each?
Combined. Yeah, combined
okay.
120.
Got it. And I mean, there are definitely.
And we weren't doctors, lawyers with a giant income waiting for us on the other side. Yeah.
Good point. Now that is enough. 120 is definitely enough to get in some places more than one house, for sure. And I can see where you're coming from. So what was, I guess, let's take us to the second. What was the thought process like? Because see, there's a time where when you went into college, what did you think? What were you expecting? What were you planning for? What was the hope? By the time, because you knew this May 2008, that part wasn't a surprise, but the circumstances that were prevalent at the time, that probably was the surprise. But so when you went in, what did you go in thinking as? Well,
that this magical money would just keep falling from the sky, and that somehow, some way, future Mark would figure it out. What's that old scene from The Simpsons where Homer Simpson is like drinking a mixture of mayonnaise and vodka? And Marge comes up to him and says, "Homer, aren't you going to hurt yourself? Isn't that terrible for your future health?" And he's like, "Future Homer? Oh boy, I don't envy that guy." And he takes another big drink. I think many of us, have a similar view to our own future. It's actually done. Recent studies have been done on the part of the brain that thinks about our future self is the same part of the brain as we understand strangers. And so how kind do you want to be to some stranger? How much are you going to save for the stranger's retirement? This future self, or how much are you going to save to get ready or to prepare for the ultimate day when all those student loans come due, for example? I mean, again, the problem is not just the the 18-year-olds that are handed a bunch of student loan debt, whether or not they understand it. The problem is the entire family system and the entire country has been on a trajectory of becoming a nation of debtors for at least 40 or 50 years, which we can talk more about. So we've been infected as a country way before the coronavirus. We've been financially sick for generations, and I'm just one more example of, I think, a larger system that shows and sort of lays bare the fact that we used to be a nation of savers. Now we've become a nation enslaved to the banks, credit cards, student loans, finance companies. And it's not so much the interest rates, because as well as I do, Jay, the interest rates are very low right now. It's not about the rate.
Statement.
Yeah, you bet, man. Well, think you got like 2%, 3%, whatever, 4% on your mortgages. You've got zero interest credit cards sometimes. You got low APRs on your car loans. It's not so much the rate, it's the volume that's really crushing us. I mean, if you go back to we're looking for this vaccine right now for a very important virus we're trying to take care of as of this recording. Hopefully our future selves found it. But
right.
But it's not the rate that they'll inject it into our arm that'll save us or kill us, right? It's the volume that counts. If they give me a drop, I might not be immune. If they give me 10 gallons of that vaccine, it might kill me. The vaccine might kill me. So it's the volume that really matters, and it's the same with our debt. The average American spends 37% of his or her income on debt payments, interest payments, servicing the debt. A third of our income, according to the U.S. Commerce Bureau, is covering all that debt, and that's the volume of interest. So we're only saving, just to compare that, Jay, we're only saving about 5% of our income. So the volume of savings is 5%. The volume of debt payment service is 37%. Who's going to win, right? I don't care what your 5% rate of, what the rate of return of your savings is. It could be, It could be 50%. It could be 200%. You'll never overcome on the averages. And by the way, if you're not as bad as the average, that means someone else is twice as bad, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's all about the volume of debt that we're carrying around. And we couldn't have handled this pandemic on a good day, but we got it as a torrential downpour right when we didn't have the money saved for it. And I think that's one of the key ways we've unfortunately been met with this crisis, is we just weren't prepared for it at every level, on a financial level, much less a health level.
So, okay, this begs a number of questions as we talk about it, because if we take us back to 2008, if you will, we're in 2008, you're looking at the marketplace. It's not what you originally thought it would be. You're out of grad school. You turn to your wife, soon-to-be wife, and you go, what are we going to do? Or was it an easy, I know, I'll become a financial planner? What was that journey?
Yeah, it wasn't. I certainly didn't graduate with a finance degree. I didn't take a single course on, Econ 101, I kind of understood supply and demand. That was about it. But what did supply and demand have to do with, covering the light bill this month and making that $900 a month student loan payment and so on? So all we had to go on was this guy on the radio who talked about being debt-free and following some baby steps. So we I
think I know who that guy is.
Okay,
Got it.
He who shall not be named.
Right.
So we had a long conversation. We started that journey, those baby steps. We started throwing all we could at the student loans. We had rice and beans, Jay, and on Fridays we'd go crazy and have beans and rice. That was basically our life.
Oh,
yeah.
And rice? That's way different. I like it.
Yeah.
Good. Way to go.
We were throwing it all toward the debt, and we thought we were doing all the right things. We had multiple side hustles. You'd have been real proud of the younger versions of us, right? We were trying to do all that we could to bring in passive income and active income, anything we could income. And we found ourselves sort of waking up halfway through, not really knowing why we were doing what we were doing, except that this radio host had told us to do all this stuff, and we never questioned it. And we also, I guess, sort of hook, line, and sinker said, hey, let's just kind of follow the mainstream advice of getting the employee 9 to 5, Let's do the traditional, buy some stock, bonds, mutual funds, invest in the markets. At that moment, I was starting to look into financial planning, making it my own personal passion. It became so important to my wife and I that we figured this money thing out, that I wanted to start diving into this on a professional level, Jay. So I started working alongside a CPA in the midst of the Great Recession. And that's when I started realizing this whole thing was a giant house of cards. This stock market, Wall Street model of investing the money we cannot afford to lose. It was a wake-up call. I mostly did tax preparations for this CPA, but I got to overhear some of her clients' calls where she was making those calls saying, I'm sorry, Mr. Client, Mrs. Client, you're 65 years old and you're about to retire, but you cannot retire, like we thought you could. I just lost you half your life savings. So, I was thinking I was on the short end of the stick just graduating college. At least I had, decades of earnable income in front of me. Some of these folks were seeing their 401ks become 201ks. And they didn't have 10 years, 30 years, whatever, to let that recover. So I started doing some more research, and it was a light bulb moment that, where is it written that we have to put all of our money into things we can't access, have no control over, and multiple people have their hands in the pot to get our money out of our pocket through fees and taxes. So to me, that was sort of the light bulb journey that sort of got us started looking at what's a better way, what's a better solution, both for our clients, because I was looking at starting a financial firm at that point, but also for ourselves, my wife and I. How could we find a way to get back control in the driver's seat with our own cash?
Well, what I like about that is that a lot of businesses are exactly that. They are born out of either a necessity or from the individual themselves. It's not like you were necessarily searching, at least it doesn't sound like you were searching for, hey, how can I start a business of some kind? It was more of a, what's a better way? How can I build a better mousetrap? What on earth do I do to solve this problem? Because if I've got it and I'm hearing they've got it, then there's likely something here that can happen. So it sounds like we're approaching what I like to call the superhero moment. It's that moment where you realize, wait a minute, I've got something special. I've got something that I can share. I've got something that the marketplace could use. Maybe I should offer it. Tell us a little bit about that, and specifically the conversation with your significant other and how that was at that time, because there's a number of people listening who likely want to make some sort of change like that too, but are having trouble making that change. Hello there, entrepreneur. This is Jay Massey. I know that if you've ever gone over to the site, cashflowdiary.com, you may have asked yourself, where on earth do you get a domain name from? Especially as you are beginning to build your bigger, better, badder business, you need a web presence. You need the email address. You need a way for people to contact you electronically so that you can stop doing the @gmail.com game. Well, the good folks over at GoDaddy have definitely supplied us with every domain that we have ever used. So what I want you to do is I want you to go over to trygodaddy.com/Cashflow Diary. Again, that's trygodaddy.com/Cashflow Diary, because it's a quick way for you to get set up to capture your domain name the exact way that you want it. They got easy search functions, and most importantly for you is that you'll be up and running today. As I said, once you get started, stay started. Don't let small little obstacles of how to get your own domain name going stop you. So again, go to trygodaddy.com/Cashflow Diary, and let's get back to the rest of the story.
Yeah, it was very clear. A mentor of ours, professor from our college, I think he felt sorry for us, seeing us work and sweat so hard, trying to wipe it. Because we were throwing a couple $1,000 extra a month on our debts on top, and we saw it as that was our only pathway. And he came to us and he said, Mark, is it possible that Dave Ramsey could be wrong about something? Is it even possible? Okay. And that was the crack open moment. That was the moment when my mind started to finally crack open. Because
you're like, wait, what? Jay. What do you mean? Tell me more.
Yeah. Right. He was like, Wait a minute, you're saying he didn't, write the fifth gospel of finance, or you're saying? So for us, it was sort of a wake up call. We just really thought anything he said just dripped from with honey, and so that was sort of our only. We didn't ever, I guess, question
and let's be real.
Advice. Yeah,
some plan, even one that you ultimately discover is not the one that you're looking for or solves all your problems, is better than no plan.
You bet, man.
Because at least
that's right.
It begins some momentum down a particular direction. I'm curious to hear though, what is it what did you change? What was the realization that made you, that was like, oh, well, this needs to be different? What needed to be different from what you were previously doing?
There were two things, and you're so right, man. I'll just echo. Get on the horse and just start moving. Ready, fire, aim is a great way to look at things, because the sooner you can do something, it's better than waiting for that perfect plan. Winston Churchill, I think, said, a plan violently executed today is better than a perfect plan next week. I hope that was Winston. Double check me on that.
But I think someone in the comments will.
You bet, man. Yeah. But, you get the point. Ready, fire, aim. While you might make a few mistakes, better than no plan at all, for sure. Right. So there were two kind of big light bulb moments. One was, could we have seen the real estate crisis coming? Could we have seen that coming? Could we have known that Lehman Brothers was going to fail? Let's fast forward just to kind of lay today's dressing on what we're talking about. Could you have seen in February that we'd all be wearing masks in April? Right. Could you have seen that Saudi Arabia and Russia would start fighting over the price of oil? Could you have told me in January that schools would be closed, airplanes would have been cut by 90%, major events, sports, quarantines, all cities and states all declaring states of emergency? Right. Could anyone have even anticipated something like this, where there'd be like circuit breakers in the market because we've had the largest swings in recorded history in the stock market, where they have to break, call a timeout? Yeah. So similarly, I had a moment where I was like, wow, do I really think my financial future should be tied to the way somebody buys and sells subprime mortgages on Wall Street? What does that have to do with me, right? That was a big wake-up call. The other big wake-up call, Jay, was you finance everything you buy. You finance everything you buy. Right. And so what I mean by this is either you pay interest to a bank, credit card, finance company, because you've gone into debt to make that purchase, or you're passing up interest you could have earned on your money if you pay cash. Why? Well, if you didn't buy that thing, you could have left it invested and continued to get some growth and interest on your money. So you're financing it from your future self. So let me say that again. If I buy a cup of coffee today for $5 or $3 or whatever, then that's $3 that I won't be able to see earn any money for me for the rest of my life. It's now over there in that guy's pocket over there. So I financed it from my future self. It's very clear. The very simple term is opportunity cost. And I'll tell you, Jay, if someone had just taught us all in 4th grade the power of a dollar and how you finance everything you buy, right? You are already in the banking business, even if you're just paying cash for everything. Right. Because you're just sitting on the wrong side of the banker's desk. So those were my big wake-up calls.
I like it because there's a lot just in those two things by themselves. But I guess for those that are listening, and so that they can continue to begin to put together their own path, I have an understanding of what you're saying, and they probably understand the words too, but I can see they're asking, okay, Mark, but what do I do about what I know? So I ask you, Mark, when you discovered this, what did you do now that you knew this? What was the day-to-day? Was there a day-to-day change? And was there a philosophy change? Is that what gave you the courage to say, you know what, honey, we got to start our own business? Or where did that come from?
Sure. Well, it was a realization that we weren't done with volatility. Back in 2008, we weren't going to be done with recessions.
Right.
I've started to think about our understanding of the stock market and retail investments like stocks, bonds, mutual funds. I believe we all view it exactly like we view abusive relationships. Here's what I mean by that. And as a CFP, I know this sounds controversial, but just listen to what mainstream media says about the stock market.
Okay.
And compare it to how you might hear someone describe an abusive relationship.
Go for it.
Say things like, this time it's different. It'll always come back. Don't look at it when it's hurting you. It's your fault you're in this position.
Got it.
I mean, those are hard things to hear, but that was a wake-up call for me. I had to believe and truly understand that I could walk away from what sounded like the only way to financial freedom. The Wall Street machine is sort of pounded into us that that's the only way to get financially free. And listeners of your show, your audience knows that that's not true, right? So you guys have already woken up from the matrix. What I found out is that the truth is, when we lose money, anytime we lose money, that's unacceptable. It's going to take us more time, more return just to get back to even. If I lose 30%, like we lost for a few moments there in March, it actually takes 43% just to break even again. Just doing the math on that, right? So that was on the Wall Street side. I had to find a place where I could park my money where it would never lose money. Well, Warren Buffett, right?
That's in the rule. I was here to say that. That's rule number one.
Yeah. So finding a place, where my money would only grow and never lose money ever again. That was an important key piece to me. I needed uninterrupted compound growth on my cash.
I like the word uninterrupted because there's a lot of people. You're laying the foundation of a plan, of a way to achieve something. And one of the things that can happen when we create a plan is it gets interrupted or has a single point of failure, or there is something that gets in the way that we did not plan for. And going this route, you're planning for the things that you did not plan for by making sure it's uninterrupted.
You bet. Well, and there's two ways that things can interrupt our growth.
Right.
Yeah, one way is Wall Street can do it, or outside influences, I should say, and internal reasons, right? So
Sure.
On average, over the last 100 years, at least temporarily, every single year, Jay, Wall Street loses 14%. A 14% correction at least once every year for the last 100 years. That's crazy. And then a 34% drop every 3 to 5 years, known as a bear market. So that's one way to interrupt compound growth.
Well,
now,
nothing else is it's consistent. If that's a trend that has happened, it's like, okay, cool. I can take some education and go, okay, is that likely to happen again? And if so,
yeah,
what can I do about it?
If I was getting robbed every year, 34% of my money gone every 3 to 5 years, would I protect my cash?
Yes, would I move?
Yeah, would I move? Right.
It's a good idea.
But it's not just Wall Street.
Yep.
I could have lost my job. What about a health emergency? What if I got disabled? What if I needed that cash for any other reason, a down payment on a house, whatever, right? So we've got all sorts of internal reasons, and there's lots of opportunities or, I guess, emergencies to break compound growth. So that was one thing. I needed compound growth on my cash. But I also needed to find a way to pay off those vicious bankers, that brood of bankers in my portfolio. So for me, we used, of all things, we did a lot of research on this, dove deep into it, but we used a tool known as dividend-paying whole life insurance, designed efficiently with massive cash accumulation. Mm-hmm. So just to pull over for a quick minute, as I went through my CFP, I had to kind of dive into over 450 financial products that are out there in the whole universe, real estate, dynastic trusts, mutual funds. You could look at annuities. You could look at savings accounts. They're all hedge funds. They're all very complex strategies, tools, products. Whole life insurance allowed me to grow my money on a guaranteed basis every single year. Mm-hmm. It allowed me to access that money before I retired. Mm-hmm. Like next Tuesday or 20 years from now, didn't matter, right? It allowed me to use the policy cash value as a source of money to buy back my debt, to become my own source of financing.
Understood. Yep.
You know, so I've got this big pile of money in my policy, and this is different than term insurance, right?
Yep.
So if it's whole life insurance, you get a big pile of cash that now you have rights to and access to, and you can use it as collateral and borrow against that money and pay off a debt, buy a piece of real estate, get some furniture in an Airbnb or whatever else you might need to use the money for. And the policy will continue to grow uninterrupted,
right?
Even on the capital I borrowed. To me, that was the straight shot. That was like the magic potion. That was the superhero moment when I saw that I could see uninterrupted growth. I'll tell you a quick story, Jay.
What's that?
Yeah.
Why didn't I know about this sooner?
Oh man, sheesh, you're telling me.
Well, now, I could tell you, but we're not going to have that conversation because here's what I do know, though. I know that there are people who are listening right now who are having a very similar experience. I'm like, what did he just say? Is that actually possible?
Right.
Wait a minute, that can't be. And
yep.
I know that you and I, we're not going to be able to cover it all to bring them to the understanding that they need to be at this one moment, this one time. So what I want to do is, for those that have listened this far and want to find out more, what's going to be the best way for them to catch up with you?
Yeah, there's certainly more to it, and you want to look deeper into this. It's not a good strategy, just carte blanche for everybody, and there's good reasons to consider it as a part of your big picture strategy. But if you want to dive into how to become your own source of financing, the best thing you can do is go to growmorewealth.com, where we'd be happy to talk with you and sort of answer your questions. It's also where you can find all of our other links to our podcast, where we've got over 100 episodes on this strategy. But it's the idea of banking on yourself and becoming your own source of financing. So if you go to growmorewealth.com, it's growmorewealth.com, you should find everything you need to find.
So as we wind down here, I've got a final question for you because I'm curious to hear your answer. There's a number of individuals who have listened this far. They like what they're hearing, and they see how you've been able to go from the situation that you were in. You were given, you entered the workforce in a time in which jobs were scarce, and yet bills and debts and college loans and all that other stuff was high, and you navigated it by educating yourself, and then now taking the time to educate others, which makes perfect sense. Also, though, there are individuals listening who likely are gathering the courage, if you will, to do something very similar for themselves. They started this episode in one position, and now they're like, well, if he can navigate it, so can I. And maybe I've got a shot too. And they're at what I like to call the precipice of decision. It's that point at which all right, there's something you should do. I should go in this direction. But because we're human, anytime we're confronted with that, we have a companion, and that companion comes in the form of a voice most often. And for some people, they're related to that voice because it reminds them of, you remember what happened last time? And oh no, are you sure you're going to be the one to teach people this? So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend that this time it's going to be different. This time they're actually going to follow through. They're going to do exactly what you suggest. What should they do?
Well, if they've got courage inside, I think it starts with the understanding that you have the same potential in 24 hours in your day that everybody else has, from Bill Gates to Elon Musk to the guy down the street to you. We all have the same potential. The question is, what are we going to do today that'll move you in the best position to leverage those 24 hours, those beautiful, precious 24 hours we're all gifted each day, to a place where it puts you in a spot of confidence and growth and maximizing your potential. I said everyone has the same potential, but Jay, I don't want the word potential on my tombstone. He had such potential. I don't want that on my tombstone. So what are we doing with our potential? And a rocket ship on a launch pad has all this potential, but if it just sits there for 30 years, what good was that? What a shame, right? Lift off. Activate your potential. Now might be just the moment to do that.
I love it. I definitely appreciate the message, because there are many that could feel like now, especially now, It's a time where there is no way, there is no hope. There's nothing I can do. And giving up is not necessarily, recommended, but more importantly, hope is not a strategy either. And you've managed to find a way and now guide people to do the same. And so let me just be one of the first to say, I definitely appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge, your wisdom, as well as your insight here with us today at the Cashflow Diary.
Well, thank you, Jay. Yeah, it comes to, you got to have a mindset to think like a banker. That's a different way to view your entire world. You also need tools in your toolbox that can tangibly get you down the path, right? I can think like Tiger Woods, but unless I got his swing and some of his actual products in his bag, his clubs, it's all just a mind game. So you're right, man. We got to have the right mindset, but we also have to have the right tools, products, and strategies to get us down the way we want to go.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means get over to growmorewealth.com. Why? Because you heard something that you did not know before, or heard it in a different way before. It resonated, and you felt that thing on the inside that says, do something. Well, the something is very simple. growmorewealth.com. Get there now, because you want to take advantage of the time that you have, because we all have. He said 24 hours. I like to say 1,440 minutes. You have the time to go out there and make yourself just a little bit better than you were yesterday. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.